Guys, we've got some good news coming out of our friends across the Mississippi River here in Louisiana. And they have, kind of like Texas, they've declared some sovereignty from what's going on around this nation and around the planet. I think it's very important. Again, Texas stood up and started taking care of their border situation. They're doing more and more by the day. But Louisiana has done something that I think every state and every nation should do. It's very important. And by the way, I'm going to put a link in the comments. I'm not going to talk about it very much at all, but you need to click on that link and read what is happening now because of the roll up your sleevers. Anyway, here in Louisiana, it says the Louisiana State Senate has passed a Senate bill with a unanimous vote. This bill is a bold declaration of state sovereignty, setting the stage for a legal barricade against the overreach of globalist organizations. They're talking about the UN, the World Health Organization, WHO, and WEF, World Economic Forum. And those are basically run by Soros and Schwab. Senate Bill 133, co-authored by Republican State Senator Valerie Hodges and Thomas A. Presley, as well as State Representative Kathy Edmonston, aims to ensure that these international bodies have no jurisdiction or authority within the state's border. The World Health Organization, the UN, and the WEF shall have no jurisdiction or power within the state of Louisiana. No rule, no regulation, no fee, no taxes, no policy or mandate of any kind of the World Health Organization or from the UN or the WEF shall be enforced or implemented by the state of Louisiana or any agency, department, board, commission, political subdivision, governmental entity of the state, parish, municipality, or any other political entity. That's from the bill. The proposed legislation is a response to what some state legislators view as an overreach by these organizations into American sovereignty and personal freedoms. And it goes back to you know what, right? Now, this response for this overreach, it needs to go a lot different than just claims of overreach. It needs to go into like a Nuremberg situation with these people involved here. World trials, world punishment. Now, Senator Hodges, who represents District 13 there, said, "We have watched a horror story unfold in front of us as time has shown that the recommendations and coercive regulations from our outside organizations such as the WHO have harmed hundreds of thousands of Americans. It may be millions." The senator cited concerns about vaccine safety and the influence of international organizations on domestic policy as key drivers for the legislation. The bill, which still needs to pass in the Republican-controlled Louisiana House, has been crafted to block the implementation of enforcement of any rules, regulations, taxes, policies, or mandates from any three of these organizations. Now, guys in Louisiana, the Senate has passed it. Now it's up to the Republican-controlled Louisiana House. You need to contact your representatives. Make sure that they get behind this, that you could save the next big wave. You understand what I'm saying? The World Health Organization just recently proposed a global pandemic treaty which includes provision for a mandatory universal digital passport and ID system. It will have everything every time you've rolled up your sleeve, anything in it. The WHO would also be granted sole authority. Now, this is over their pandemic treaty. Sole authority over what constitutes a pandemic. And as we have seen over the past 2 years, just about anything qualifies as an existential threat to public health, including but not limited to misinformation, parents protesting at school boards, free speech, and, of course, racism. The fact that the WHO is on the cusp of unrestricted authority to decide these measures should terrify every American in their right. What's more, the changes also includes plans for a mandatory and universal vaccine passport system that's overseen by the WHO. In fact, the globalist organization has already contracted a German-based company called T Systems to develop the technology. Now, I'm going to get in touch with some of our legislators here and pass this information on to them and push them to read it very carefully and try to get this in place here. Remember, a lot of people talk down on the southern states, but Mississippi was the one that broke the back of Wade versus Roe. Just last year, wasn't it? That really stirred up the libtards. Anyway, it says even a public health emergency of regional concern would have triggered the WHO's authority to step in, like if just something broke out in Louisiana, for instance, to step in and enforce rules on mask wearing, social distancing, and lockdowns. Even vaccines, of which Big Pharma always has a new one at the ready, could be mandated by the UN agency headed by the corrupt Ethiopian communist Dr. Tedros. Now, again, this is the most important problem facing this planet are these three organizations. You've got the WHO, then you got the United Nations. What would they do? Bring in UN troops to enforce the new rules and regulations, or would the corrupt government go along with it and use our military or National Guard, whatever? The amended agreement, again, this is the treaty from the World Health Organization. It would prevent Americans from doing anything that the United Nations world government apparatus did not want to be done, and would in essence take away all rights of Americans in an emergency, like the roll-up-your-sleever. Thanks at least in part to the efforts of conservative news outlets, the Biden regime's push for a new level of global governance was defeated last year at the World Health Assembly in Geneva, when a bloc of mostly African nations balked and walked. Why? What has the World Health Organization with Bill Gates done to Africa? Think about it. But now the Biden regime is back at it, and they're pushing for this insane action to destroy Americans' rights once and for all. Continues, it says the Biden regime publicly affirmed their commitment to a legally binding pandemic accord in a press release back in February. This will give the World Health Organization control over U.S. pandemic policies, though work remains in certain areas. There's going to be a lot of work to get all of this concluded, especially when you're starting to see states fight back. So I again encourage everyone to pass this information on to your state representatives, senators, governor, whatever, and let's see if it won't spread. They're calling it an accord instead of a treaty in an effort to bypass U.S. Senate approval. Yes, the Biden regime is attempting to unilaterally hand over U.S. sovereignty to the United Nations, WHO, and by the way, the World Economic Foundation, while pushing other nations to do the same. Former Minnesota U.S. Representative and current head of the School of Government at Regent University, Michelle Bachmann, is concerned about the globalists whose arrogance leads them to deny God-given individual rights. They want to deny it because they are just about to lose their rights as far as anything God-given, because they are following their father, the devil. Bachmann said, people sense that there's something seriously, drastically wrong, and that something is that you and I and people across the world are losing their freedom and their authority to make decisions. What we are seeing is that our choices are being taken away from us. As a matter of fact, we are being punished for choices. We are being censored for choices. Now, there's a lot of things changing very quickly. I think the WHO and the CDC, they may be realizing that they could be in a lot of trouble over what they've done and said and lied about and the censorship they pushed on us. Now they're saying that the ivermectin is okay. After everybody says it's not okay, you got to take all of this, right? We won't forget it. She said we may not have the freedoms in the very near future that we enjoyed even 5 years ago or 10 years ago. We're seeing that not only in the U.S., but we're seeing that globally in countries across the world. Today there's a threat of global domination. It seems to come from global institutions, but also from people who have more wealth than people who have ever seen before in the history of man. You know who they're talking about. They're planning on another pandemic right around the corner. Guys, would this be in time for the election or before inauguration? Who knows? It says they're planning another pandemic right around the corner. Of course, the pandemic is just a pretext for control. Excuse me, guys. Now, I'm going to link another article. I don't want to talk about it much, but it has everything to do with this and what is happening, guys. A lot of people are about to be running scared. Pay attention to it. Share this information with your states and your government. And also pass along the link that I'm going to send to you. Again, it's not something you want to put on YouTube if you want to keep your channel, but it needs to be discussed. We're watching it. You watch it. It's a heads up. Be safe.